Hi, I haven't done a sit and talk video in a while, but one of the ones that I came up with recently that I feel like maybe it would be interesting to discuss is my experience living here in San Diego compared to New Jersey, which is a place that I have lived ever since I was born. I was always living in New Jersey. I don't remember much about early life. I'd say the main portion that I remember is ever since we bought our house, and I think we bought it in 1998, so I was 7 years old at the time. For the people that don't really know me well, I will just give a quick summary as to why I moved out here to San Diego. So first off, whenever people ask me about why I moved out here, I definitely tell them that it is because of the weather. At the time in New Jersey, I was finding that during the winter, it was very difficult for me to walk Raleigh without feeling like I was suffering very hard, because I have always been someone who gets cold very easily. Even here in San Diego, at first when I moved here, I was thinking my down jacket would be a complete waste, but it is not at all. Honestly, I could wear my down jacket at the office and be happy about it. The main reason that I don't is because it's so bulky that the sleeve area feels like it kind of gets in the way when I'm working, and it's just not entirely comfortable, but it would definitely keep me warm to the point where I'm not overheated whatsoever. I would always have that issue where even if it's hot outside, if it's summer, if I go to anywhere indoors, like a movie theater or a restaurant, they always crank up their AC. So I would be wearing shorts and a short sleeve shirt, and if I go anywhere inside, I would just be cold, and if I stayed there long enough, then I would start to feel pretty unhappy because I'm cold, because it's so bothersome. Trying to bundle up when it's 30 degrees outside in New Jersey was very difficult. I also don't think I had the proper gear to stay warm. I focused a lot on fashion in those years, so a lot of fashionable clothing is very thin, and it's definitely not going to keep you warm. So I wouldn't layer properly. I wouldn't have the proper gloves or boots or shoes or anything. So trying to walk her became very difficult, or I wasn't very eager to do it. And I didn't really like that feeling. I didn't like not being able to walk her while feeling happy about it. So I was also unhappy at my job at the time. And when I was talking to Shane about this whole thing during that period of time, he encouraged me to try to apply out here, and he would tell me about how the weather is awesome all year round. And since I never really lived anywhere else, and since I never traveled throughout the US to the point where I stayed somewhere long enough to understand what the weather was like, him describing San Diego to me, where the weather is nice all year round, felt kind of unbelievable to me. Like I couldn't fathom that that was possible. So the thing is, when I decided to move out here, I actually had never been in San Diego for more than a week. The only time I was here was during a work trial for a job that I was hoping to get, but that fell through. So that was the only week I was ever in San Diego, and I still decided that I wanted to move here. I have been here since April 2017. Since I've been here, there are definitely a lot of obvious differences. So first off, I think this one's a very obvious one, and I've talked about it all the time, is traffic. Another thing that maybe you should know about me is I have always prioritized commute as something I want to keep short. So I'd say for the past, it's been a while, I'd say for the past 4 to 5 years, I will ballpark it, I have lived within 20 minutes of my office. I feel like that was a choice that I'm very happy to make, because I haven't experienced a long commute in a very long time, and I like keeping it that way because I really value my time. So spending a lot of time driving just to get to work every single day, including traffic maybe, I just didn't want to do that. I feel like a lot of people spend so much of their time and day in traffic, where if you add it all up, that is a lot of time wasted, and I don't want to be one of those people. Here in San Diego, I'd say obviously it depends on where you live and where you work around here, but generally traffic starts very early. I'd say, okay, so for example, I had a horseback riding lesson at 8 a.m. in Del Mar, and from my house, it takes 30 minutes to get there without traffic. I left at 7 a.m. and I'd say I got there barely on time. So that was kind of disappointing to see that I could leave an hour early and still feel like I barely made it. So to feel like leaving an hour early still doesn't make it certain that you'll be on time really sucks around here. The traffic definitely starts before 7 a.m. on most days. And usually I'd say by 9, it is subsiding, and by 10, it's just completely gone. That is why I always go into work nowadays around 10 a.m. or after, because I want to leave work after 6 o'clock, ideally after 6:30, because I want to experience nothing. I don't want any slowdowns at all. So the perfect time to leave work, I feel like, where it will consistently be empty, is 7, but sometimes that does feel late, and I usually leave around 6:30, sometimes 6:15. I always check traffic before I go home, but I'd say afternoon traffic ranges from 3 until past 6. I'm not positive that it always starts at 3 or how bad it starts to get, or how early it starts to get bad, because I don't check the traffic at that time. But sometimes I just notice that on the weekdays, if I had a day off, if I'm out driving around 3 o'clock, I was starting to experience slowdown, and I really didn't like that, because that kind of gives me the feeling of not really being able to go anywhere during the weekday. And I feel like you are very limited in the amount of time you can do something before you start to experience traffic. It kind of feels ridiculous to me to have such a large time window, both in the morning and at night, where traffic is an issue. In New Jersey, I was certain that if I ever went into work at 7 in the morning, it would be dead. The thing though is that in New Jersey, I feel like I was usually consistent with going into work early to make sure I would always skip traffic. So I don't know how severe and how long it would usually last, but it is obviously nothing compared to here. So that is just a big deal that I am learning that I don't really want to tolerate for too long. Traffic is always going to get worse. There's always going to be more people moving here. I feel like they're also probably wanting to build more residential areas around here, so it's just gonna get worse. Another aspect that I feel like I was not entirely familiar with is the nice feeling of, I don't know, wanting to look up a store or wanting to purchase something, and whenever I would check online to see where the nearest one is, it was always generally pretty close. I feel like I have access to everything that I need within 20-minute drive. In New Jersey, there were times where I felt like I would have to drive 30 minutes out for a lot of stuff that I liked. I guess there's always a good and a bad for both of those things. I'd say the bad for that here is that I have access to so many foods that are really good and that can be tempting at times, so it might entice me to spend more money eating out. Whereas I remember in New Jersey, the last year that I lived at the condo, I felt like that was a very non-Asian neighborhood, so a lot of the local foods were things that I didn't really have much interest in, and it was kind of a more expensive community, I think. So I did not buy out very often, so I was always cooking a lot, so that meant that I was spending less on buying out or ordering a lot of food. Here, it is very, very easy to get tempted to deliver food. I've talked about it a lot. Delivering food just kind of sucks because you pay for tip. I would not pay for a tip, but I feel obligated to, so I hate that. You pay for the service fee and then tax as usual, but tip and service fee usually adds up to being like an extra $3 to $4, and that adds up over time, and it makes the meal so much more expensive than it would be if you just went and drove there. I know that driving there will save that amount, but I don't like spending that time doing that because around here, it's always such a hassle to drive to these places because of traffic. Sometimes the entrances to wherever these restaurants are designed so poorly that it gets congested easily, and it's just such a pain to get in and out. And I don't want to be the person to be dealing with that. I'll just pay someone to deal with that. But of course, it would just be better if I could avoid delivering food and eating out as much as possible. But here, it's just hard. There's a lot of delicious stuff that I crave once in a while. And you just need to find that balance, right? Of not doing it too often, but allowing yourself to do it once in a while just because, you know, treat yourself. Okay, next, how about hiking? I guess I would say that I feel like the hiking around here is much better in terms of what you see and the amount of places you have access to. But of course, a place like California will suffer from, oh, hi, Peppers. A place like California will, as usual, suffer from the amount of people you will see on the trails. So I never hike around the city because there's just too many people. I went with Shane to Iron Mountain. That is a very popular one here in the city. And honestly, it's nice because it takes you up really high and then you are so high above the city, you can see out very far and it looks nice. But there are 1 billion people on that hike and it's so crowded that makes it difficult to find parking. And if you're like constantly zigzagging around people or being slowed down by people or having to pass people or having someone behind you making you feel like you can't take as much time as you need, it just sucks. I don't like hiking that way. Hiking, I like it to be an isolated thing. So I always drive out an hour away from the city, but even when I do that, I'm not always alone, so it kind of sucks. In New Jersey, I don't think I took up hiking until I got rallies, so I was only in New Jersey for a year where I was hiking around a little bit. Obviously, it was super nice because there were definitely way less people. I don't think I had that much anxiety about encountering people when hiking in New Jersey as I do here. But in addition to the scenery though, I'll say that it was very noticeable to me that whenever I drive around here on the highway, it's so beautiful because you see the change in elevation and all of that. And or if I'm driving out east, I see the mountains far away, so it's very beautiful. But in New Jersey, whenever I'm driving on a highway, I just feel like there's buildings around me. I don't see anything beautiful to look at when it comes to nature. So that's a big thing that I noticed. Okay, so this might sound silly, but I know San Diego is considered a city, but at times it's hard for me to see it that way because I feel like majority of San Diego feels like suburban to me. And whenever I think of cities, I always picture New York City because that was someplace that was close by to New Jersey, and I always imagined all cities to have a similar feel to New York City. I know that's very narrow-minded to think that, but I just always did. So to think of San Diego as a city seemed a little far-fetched to me, but one aspect of that is very true about here is that parking is usually an issue, and that's another reason why that I don't go to pick up food that often, because I don't want to deal with parking, and parking is always difficult to find. And if you're, circling around for a while trying to find a spot, it's just terrible. Usually anytime if I wanted to go pick up food or something, I don't think about parking very much. Whenever I was in New Jersey, parking was never a thing I needed to worry about. So when I came here and I would just drive someplace, like, oh, I'm gonna get some food, and then when I get there, I realized that parking sucks ass. There's like hardly any spots, and then I had to spend that effort trying to find a place. Might be far, have to walk to the restaurant for a long distance. I just don't like having to anticipate stuff like that. I'm not used to it. I don't really like having to worry about that in addition to whenever I just want to go someplace. Okay, cost of living is probably a big one for most people, but I guess I'll say that New Jersey has always been known to have a high cost of living as well. My Chubb office was like west of the central area of New Jersey. It kind of felt like it was located somewhere rural. So I was always surprised to hear about people who lived in Pennsylvania for the cheaper cost of living and they would drive into New Jersey, but they would experience a fuckload of traffic because all of the same people who were doing that would drive in at the same time and it would just be packed. So I am not the type of person who would live somewhere far but cheap and tolerate the commute like that. I feel like that's not a great way to live because I would be miserable in traffic. Anytime I experience traffic now, I'm just always automatically, I'm like, oh fuck, I hate life. Like, I feel myself being so negative, and I don't enjoy it one bit. So going from New Jersey cost of living to here didn't feel like a big deal to me. I've talked about my living situation in another video, and I feel like I have always already paid more than the average person for living expense by living by myself. So coming here and seeing the prices wasn't really a surprise for me, and it didn't exactly bother me. Of course, now that I'm really wanting to save money and realizing that I pay nearly $2,200 to live here on a monthly basis does suck. Whenever I think about just one other person sharing that expense with you, dividing it by 2 is so much savings, but I'm not willing to give up that quality of life to save that money. So it kind of sucks, but I have that priority of wanting to live happily by myself. I think it would make sense that the cost of living here is more than New Jersey, but I've never really made direct comparisons. I do think that my living situation at the condo was great. I feel like the square footage for the condo was very similar to this house. This house is 1,300. I feel like the condo was also 1,300. It was 2-bedroom. The living room was pretty large. Kitchen, I don't know. Yeah, I feel like it's a very similar amount of space. And I was paying $1,700 there. So now I'm paying $500 more. And the setup for the condo in New Jersey was actually one that I could tolerate because the buildings were just spaced out very well. The entrances were also as well. So I did not feel like I was crammed to the point where I would interact with a neighbor regularly, like coming through a main walkway entrance or something. So I liked that condo setup. But here in San Diego, I don't think a condo like that will exist. All of the condos that I've seen on Zillow look like apartments, and I don't like that setup. I would never live close to my neighbor to that point ever again, so I'm stuck with expensive rent. I could definitely lower it if I lived further out, which I'm totally okay with, but then there's the issue with driving home to walk Raleigh. So I would not actually be thrilled about a 30-minute commute, but the idea of living further out east is very, very appealing to me. I like the idea of living in Alpine or Ramona. Santa Isabel is even somewhere that I feel like I would really enjoy, but Santa Isabel is 1 hour away from the city, so that's probably a bit too far. But yeah, cost of living was not something I had to adjust to. I've always paid a lot, so I continue to pay a lot, and hopefully someday I will experience a mortgage or rent to the point where it's like 30% of my income. That would be really nice. Okay, so another one goes along with the amount of people here. This is one that does actually kind of upset me persistently, if that makes any sense. Like, I always wished it were different, but since there are so many people here, and also since we're along the city, I feel like there are not a lot of open space areas that I have access to where I feel like I have enough privacy away from other people to play fetch with Raleigh. At times I feel like this is a really stupid thing to put too much emphasis on, but fetch is something that she really likes to do, and I like to engage in that with her because she just looks so happy running, and I like to see that. So it makes me sad that we're not able to do that regularly. I mean, technically, yes, we can, but I don't like the idea of doing it at a dog park where other dogs are around, because I don't want her around other dogs that are bad influences, and that is majority of them. Dog parks are also awful because the people who bring their dogs there, they don't discipline their dogs. So I just don't want to be around any of that. So that makes it hard already because there's just few places where you can let your dog off leash. California has a leash law. Obviously, if I'm playing fetch with her, I don't want her on a leash because that's just not fun for either of us. I want her to be able to run as far as she can and as fast as she can, and a leash hinders that. She might trip over it, and it's just terrible. I did it for a while at Balboa Park, having her leashed on a very long, like 20-foot one, and I had to run forward at times to make sure it wouldn't jerk her because of how far she went. So nowadays, I don't really play fetch with her unless I drive out to Verona Reservation. That is currently one of the places that I enjoy taking her to play fetch, because not a lot of people go there. And this is just some bit of land that is on the side of a baseball field, and usually it's just empty. So that is what I strive for, and I don't want to bother anybody. I just want to play some fetch with her. So even if I were to do it here, I just feel like people would bitch about her being off leash, and of course if a ranger came by, they would bitch about it also. But the main reason I feel comfortable letting her off leash is because I know she'll listen to me. I don't let her off leash and simultaneously am inconsiderate of other people. If I knew that she wouldn't listen to me 100% and would bother somebody else being off leash, like if someone came by and we were playing fetch and she ran off to say hi to them, obviously not everybody likes that, and that is a big concern for most people when they see a dog off leash. I know I feel that way too. Feel like someone that sees us and kind of sees how we are in our dynamic, and seeing how she behaves and listens to my commands, would know that she's very obedient. So anyways, I've been rambling about this for a while, but I used to have this park in Bedminster that was a 5-minute drive, and oftentimes if we went there, it was empty. And even if it wasn't empty, it was big enough that I can find a little bit of area. I still felt comfortable with how much spacing there was between everybody at the park, and I liked that a lot. Having this open grassy field to play fetch with her and having it be so close, I really, really liked that. So to go from that to now, where we don't play fetch very often unless I drive 30 minutes to Verona, it just kind of sucks, you know? And to also feel like even if there are open fields not being used, I just don't like the idea of being scolded. And I know it's probably silly to fear something like that. I wouldn't say I'm fearful of it, but it definitely dissuades me from just going and doing it. Like, I don't want some person to come up on me and scold me for something like that regularly. So I just avoid it altogether. All right, the last one that I can think of that is a big difference between here and New Jersey is probably the variety of things you have access to when it comes to events, I guess. So lately I've been paying more attention to it, but the fact that Del Mar hosts a lot of horse events is great for me, because nowadays I am finally starting to indulge in that. And this was something I've always wanted. I've talked about it a little bit in my past few videos, but I want to attend more horse events. I just want to be around them more. I'm going to take lessons, but just being able to attend a horse event, like a championship, is very cool to me. That's not something that I would have access to in New Jersey, I think, not even close. So to have it just 30 minutes away is so cool to me. And there's just a lot of different events also that take place there. The gun show, I guess there would probably be a gun show in New Jersey also, but I guess at the time I just never really looked those things up. But San Diego Comic-Con also as well. And I guess another thing is, like, it's also close to LA, so if there was anything I desperately wanted to do in LA for an event, I could always just drive up there. BlizzCon is there, but I don't care about that. The one thing though that I always find to be kind of strange is that California feels like it has everything, but for some reason, none of the Dota tournaments happen around here. I would really love to attend one in person around here that's local. There is a tournament that is held in LA once a year, the Summit, but that one is kind of a closed off tournament where they don't have anywhere that they broadcast it to an audience. The appeal of that tournament is just that the players get to play in a house, and it feels like a very, very chill atmosphere. It's very enjoyable. It doesn't feel too proper and formal, so they really enjoy it. And I think that if they did invite an audience, that would kind of ruin the atmosphere. So that's kind of unfortunate, because being able to attend a Dota 2 tournament that is just local, that I can access very easily, that would be so awesome. And I would definitely like that. I would totally be down for that. Okay, so my video is going to come to a close. And I think maybe the last thing I want to discuss is what I would prefer in my current stage in life. I would be lying if I didn't say that the weather is still an amazing and dominant reason why I do enjoy living here. Every single day when the sun is shining and it's warm, I am super, super appreciative of it. I go outside to walk Wildlife and I'm in such a good mood. I'm so happy, and I really do enjoy walking her around when the weather is like that. And that's very often, right? So I walk her very often now, 2 times for now because it's getting darker early. But during the summer, sometimes I would walk her 3 times a day. And I loved it. I really do enjoy it, especially when we take long ones together. It just feels so peaceful. An aspect that is really starting to appeal to me now is seeing how I can handle cold weather if I am properly dressed for it. So earlier, I mentioned that I would always buy fashionable stuff in the past, which made it difficult for me to stay warm because they were all very thin. So I never really knew much about how to properly stay warm. I didn't really think about layering, and I bought a lot of clothing based on appearance than function. So from here on out though, I would be so thrilled to buy something that's poofy, that's bulky, that's not appealing and slender to keep me warm. And I just feel like if I were able to conquer that aspect of being warm outside and staying bundled up and being very cozy, then I would absolutely be down for living somewhere cold, because there's just so many more options if I could live in a cold state. And Montana, that is somewhere that I feel like I would really enjoy living in, but I'm mainly concerned about the cold winters and the snow and all of that. So if I could tackle this cold issue that I have, then I would absolutely consider all these other different areas like Utah. Colorado is another great one. Just the idea of being so well bundled up that even being outside in 30 degrees doesn't bother me. I love that idea. Plus, there's the other benefit of living in a place where I can finally enjoy the cold weather and the snow. It definitely has its appeal for me, but at the same time, it's super nice to just wear very little clothing and being outside here in 70-degree weather. So it's a trade-off. Hopefully in the future, I will be successful enough where I can have 2 homes and I can be at the proper place during the right seasons. But that sounds a little optimistic sometimes, but I really like to dream at times. All right, I feel like that is all the points that I could think of so far, but I'll just end it with, I was really, really happy with my choice. I still am, but long term, I'm just uncertain if I want to stay here, mainly because of the cost. It's just too much money for what you get, I think. So anyways, thank you for watching, and I will see you guys in the next video.